Allora, buon, buona serata.
Good afternoon. My name is Vasco Giannotti. I'm the president of the firm risk management in the health sector. This is the fourth day of this four-day meeting at Fortezza del Basso in Florence. I'm very pleased to host and to organize together with Farmindustria this very interesting meeting about medical devices made of substances that has been deeply interesting from the very beginning because of the issues that are at stake and because of the people and stakeholders involved. It is a very popular, so to say, very modern issue that is at stake at the moment. And I think that opening this afternoon session with a very authoritative presence in representation of the European Parliament by an Italian MP gives us the right idea, creates the right framework in which we find ourselves. Thank you, President, for your presence here. You were here also last year, so we thank you very much, and I kindly give you the floor. Thank you.
Grazie, è sempre un piacere.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be able to talk about industrial politics, about healthcare and politics and policies. And I thank you very much, all the organizers of this event, the Italian Association of Industries, the representatives also of the director of ANMET, Dr. Sandra Chico. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your presence here. But I'm here. I'm here because I've been vice president of the European Commission for many years and European Commissioner in industrial issues. When we have to support an excellence at a European and at an Italian level as well, I feel it as a duty because we need to compete. We need to protect in the very best way our citizens through policy of growth, which is not just economic and financial growth, but is also real life model growth. So this meeting occurs 2 days after the trust vote expressed at a parliamentary level in Europe, the European Parliament, a European Commission that wants to be fully committed in 3 areas. I would say 4, actually. 3 aimed at the centrality of the person. So people, human beings at the center, and the fact that we have to support eco-sustainability, we have to fight against pollution, then the fight against cancer as a priority at a European Union level. And another aspect is that of innovation, technological innovation and research as well. In a context that is a wider one, the new Green Deal, the new commitment to fight against climatic change and to safeguard the environment. I want to be very clear and honest. I'm fully convinced that we have to do more to fight against climatic change. But I don't think that we are faced with a climatic emergency at the European level. But it's something that we are all called upon. I think that the German friends understand the difference, because in German, as in Italian, there is a big difference when we talk about emergency or urgency. So both Italians and my colleagues in Germany of the European Popular Party, we didn't vote in favor of the emergency in the climatic changes problem, but it doesn't mean that we are not committed in doing our best to clean the environment, to make it cleaner at least, and to make it better for everyone, to be used for everyone. And the European regulations, the European rules that are related to these specific matters is going to be applied very soon. I think it is very important to have set up certain rules in an area of the industrial world that works using different tools if compared to the traditional pharmaceutical industry. But it is very important that we have the final goal, that is health care for citizens. Why were we talking, for example, about the fight against cancer? Because we can use specific kind of drugs or medical devices to prevent, so they work for prevention, and other work for the cure, the treatment. So it is very important to set up these rules, and we have done it in a context that we consider industry-friendly, where we can promote innovation and research. I really wanted to focus on the idea Horizon Europe, Horizon 2020, devoted to research and innovation. There are about 100 billion euros to be invested, and this number might even increase to be spent for these issues. And we really hope that in the next financial framework, an important number of funds will be devoted. Otherwise, we cannot grow. We cannot see any development. If we want to improve the results that we have obtained so far, we want to be sure that in the pharmaceutical sector, all the companies involved, whatever the means used, they will be able to go on to make further steps, to take further steps in the future to guarantee citizens' health. So research, it means to invest in the future. Thanks to research, we have discovered Ebola vaccine. We could save many lives. We could have new therapeutical measures. We could create and build new tools, and so on. So we have to support this kind of approaches and tools, using all the resources that are available. We've also witnessed something important in the past, the competition of some realities at a world level. Globalization imposes on us a certain system that is characterized certain guarantees for the production at a European level. Also, in your sector, we have competition, and we have also dishonest competition. We know that there are counterfeited products also in the sector where you are working in, and we have to be sure that rules will allow everybody to act properly, legally, without fakes, and to guarantee the respect of the rules. Rules that we have created in your sector, in your area, in your industrial area, where the Italian industries work, and this has helped us so far. This helps us to have a wider horizon, to have more of these good rules and good practices, and to widen them also, to spread them out in other countries. countries that are our friends, that are our partners, not just because we share a common economic interest, but we share history, languages, culture, values. In South America, there is a strong presence of Spain, Portuguese, German, and Italian presence. In every country in America, in Latin America, there's a strong European presence. If you have a look at the list of names on the telephone books, and you can see that. I mean, in São Paulo, the presence of Italians is really high. In Buenos Aires as well, when they celebrate Christmas, there are lots of Italo-Argentinian families or Italo-Argentinian groups celebrating together. And the Spanish-Argentinian language is more similar to the Italian than what is the Spanish in Spain. So we are all sharing lots of things. We have lots of in common. And this also is going to be translated into something else. So we have to be all committed in Europe and in the world to go on in this way. In Argentina, they could obtain certifications. They opened up new ways in the market. They obtain proper recognition of the medical devices made of substances. This is just the beginning. These are just the first signals that we have. And we cannot leave South America in Chinese hands. We cannot allow that Chinese competition might jeopardize and risk what we have created, these connections, these bonds between Europe and South America, for example. This is very important for me. Latin Americans want to have a privileged kind of relationship with us. And we have maybe looked up at Russia and the eastern countries, and we didn't look after some issues with South America, whereas we should do that because we have common interests that we need to develop and to foster for different reasons. So I think this is a very positive thing. The representation here by the ANMAT, the speakers that are here, they are really the signal that they want to collaborate, and we want it too. So I have a role where I have to rule and govern in Brussels, and I think that the Parliament should control the right application of the rules, being sure that the Commission is not distracted by other sectors. We need to have a correct application of the text, of the legislative text, the regulation in particular that creates a new kind of path, a new way. We will do everything that we can to help the respect, the compliance with the rules as far as Europe is concerned. Europe that does something, Europe that produces something, Europe that is related also to a rural tradition. Europe that should never forget that real economy is fundamental for growth. Europe that it doesn't look at the industrial world and the rural world as two separate things, and that takes everything very seriously. From this point of view, also, as for the commitment against climatic change, we have to remember that the best defender of the environment is agriculture. So we should not cut cost in the agricultural sector. Looking at the European level, the future plans, I think we need to have a more modern and more competitive agriculture. We need to look at organic and bio areas, but we cannot forget the important role played by agricultural industries and stakeholders. We have 5 years of great efforts and commitment. I'm positive I want to be a point of reference for companies, for the Italian companies, and for the agricultural sector as well in our country, in Brussels. And I also want to be a point of reference in order to support all the industrial productions at a European level. I think that Europe needs a real industrial policy. It's not just about factories. It's not the world of the Industrial Revolution of the 1800s. It's a kind of industrial world that is aimed at sustainability, as eco-friendliness, as respect and safeguard of the environment. But it's, again, industry and industry-based world, but industry and agriculture go hand in hand. Without them, there's no job. There are no jobs, and there are no achievements. So we need to guarantee to every citizen a certain dignity. In the southern parts of Europe, we have a very high level of unemployment, especially among young people, and this is unacceptable. We don't want these numbers to increase. We don't want it to get to the north of Europe and the north of Italy. So we are all convinced that we have and we must do everything that is in our power to allow to all the industrial sectors, as yours, to be able to act freely without too much bureaucracy, without too much rules, without too many rules, and without constraints and the so-called bureaucratic whims. Because if there is too much bureaucracy at a local and international level, this is not helping the industrial world. That's the end of my speech, but we are at the beginning of a new era, and so in Brussels, you will find in myself someone who will listen to you and will support you if you work for the creation of employment and a better future for our children.
Thanks to President Tajani. I would like to recall one fair concept that I share. The sector of medical devices based on substances is characterizing the European economy. And in this characterization, of course, the role of Italy is a very important role. And I'd like to say that if we have achieved this milestone, that this sector today is extremely important for the future of Italy, well, this is also thanks to the fact that the Italian system worked at least once. There was a convergence between category associations, Confindustria, Dispositivi Medici, Ministry for Health, Economic Development, the Institute for Health. This means that we worked as a system, and the results are evident. We have achieved these results also because, as I said, Italy now can communicate with other parts of the world, and we are very happy to host here today and to have a very outstanding contribution by Mrs. Sandra Chico, who's going to talk in representation of Mr. Chiai of the Agency of Drugs in Argentina. We will talk about the medical devices based on substances as an innovation tool also for the Argentine pharmaceutical system. You have the floor.
In the first time, good afternoon for all, and Dr. Chiale, thanks for the invitation, and thanks for all. Oh. The next. Okay, thank you. Okay. Bueno, ANMAT introduction is National Administration of Drug, Food and Medical Devices, is created in August in 1992, has a nationwide jurisdiction, product regulation by ANMAT, food, drugs, medical devices, cosmetic, diagnostic reagents, important dietary supplements. In Argentina, we are drawing up a new directive based in EIMA and ICH 9 and corresponding ISO. And ADMAT has created an interdisciplinary committee of which I am a member, which is working on the evaluation of the existing international regulation regarding innovative products. For this, ADMAT considered the guidelines recommended of ICH Q8, ICH Q9, ISO 31010, and ISO 14971, household guides, and ISP, risk-based manufacturing products. ADMAT has a new committee for evaluation of innovative products, which objectives is analyze the current situation in Argentina and assess our relation position in the worldwide context, evaluate the process of the team that are working on innovative products. ADMAT Committee for Evaluation of Innovative Products, in this, each member of the committee belongs to different work groups, and whenever there is a significant topic or event concerning innovative products, its potential implementation in our country is discussed and assessed in meetings organized for this specific. And in defining which section of ADMAT should take care of the innovative products, and evaluation of the applicability criteria to create the flowchart for the distribution of that products to achieve this subset, we refer to international products regulation country enforced worldwide, with special attention to those countries having companies which operate on both in the domestic international market. The ADMAT current paradigm is 2 points. The 1 point, regulatory science, use the best scientific evidence available to make regulatory decisions resulting from the interactions of all relevant stakeholders, professional, regulatory authorities, and society. And the 2nd point, sanitary surveillance, for group of action aimed to prevent, mitigate, or delay risks to health through the application of the international systems. What is medical devices for ADMAT? The medical devices is any instrument, apparatus, contrivance, machine, appliance, implant, in vitro reagents or calibrators, software, material, or other similar or related articles intended by the manufacturer to be used alone or in combination for human beings, which one of more of purpose specific below. We can use them for diagnostic, prevention, monitoring, treatment, alleviation, or mitigation of disease. And we can use for diagnostic, monitoring, treatment, alleviation, or compensation and injury. And can use to investigation, replacement, modification, or support an anatomical or physiological process. For last, supporting or substance life. In ADMAT is its health-related products such as an instrument, apparatus, material, contrivance, or system for medical, dental, or laboratory use, or appliance intended for prevention, diagnostic, treatment, rehabilitation, or anti-conception, and does not involve any pharmacological, immunological, non-metabolic mechanism to carry out its therapeutical effect in human beings, but could eventually be assisted by such means. For in ADMAT is under the definition that ADMAT can consider certain types of products such as cold mixture as a medical devices. ADMAT has designed a system for risk management, especially for these products. The critical points considered are, amongst others, quality standard of the country of origin, length of time of the authority using the market, and history and background of the manufacturer. In ANMAT, it was composed with 3 agencies with a specialist staff for evaluation inspector. For the one is the regulation, product referent, medicinal products, cosmetic, tecnología médica, regulation referred medical devices, and INAR referred food, important dietary supplements. The situation is the several changes where the first problem is medical devices based on substances require an evaluation and quality control beyond the expertise or professional working of technology medical. And the second possible solution is to be created a category and hybrid products registered as medical devices, but all other aspects evaluated and controlled by ANMAT. Our future change is establish dynamic mechanisms for the classification and evaluation of innovative products. In particular, provide tailor-made workforce according to the class of risks of the medical devices to identify, evaluate, and eventually mitigate the risk through the life cycle of the medical devices, and which requests a plan for risk assessment and management to be applied systematically for the risk control of medical devices. Our future evaluates the balance between the risks of the proposed use or application of the particular medical devices associated with use and the benefits related to the clinical products or therapeutic advance or circumstance derived from its use. What's defined the risk assessment criteria of these innovative products based on the background or history of compliance of the manufacturers and or the countries of origin, establish requirements for the assessment of the risk management plan associated to the product, and establish assessment criteria for the registration of the medical devices. Which future of medical devices based on natural substance in Argentina? The registration of medical devices based on substance will be implemented using the described framework. An interdisciplinary committee for evaluation of innovative products will be responsible of regulating the innovative medical devices, applying the concept of risk analysis. And to sum up, in Argentina, we are aware of the positive impact that medical devices made of substances have in a European healthcare system. We are also aware of the innovative treatment opportunities that they can offer, and this is reason that ANMAT has started to work seriously on this project. Thank you, and available for questions.
Molte grazie alla dottoressa Sandra Chico.
Thank you to Sandra Kiko, who has shown us how also in this sector a relationship between Italy, Europe, among Italy, Europe, Argentina, Latin America, can be an important crossroads for development and future perspective. Now I would like to leave the floor to moderate the other session to Emiliano Giovannoni, outstanding member of Confindustria Dispositivi Medici. So this morning we have seen different aspects of the new regulation on medical devices. We have seen political implications, and we have also analyzed the technical or regulatory issues. And this is, essential, especially when we deal with a regulation that has internally a strong thrust towards innovation. Nevertheless, it's important to understand what's the industrial fabric, what are the excellences in the industry operating in this sector. And as we conceived this roundtable, we decided with Fernanda to open up this moment as a moment to share opinions and experiences in order to go more into depth as for the excellences that we have in Italy. We heard talking and about all the interventions about this. But in order to be really competitive and to grasp the opportunities that are coming out of innovation in the future, well, the level of discussion shall be extended to the European scope. The interlocutors and speakers who took the floor at this event are all European speakers. So we thought this was a great opportunity to exchange different industrial experiences that might have a moment of pondering on how to change, how the healthcare framework is destined to change. Of course, it will change, and it will be a disruptive change. Willing or not, we have to recognize this. So we are faced with two alternatives. The first possibility is to interpret this change according to a whole set of insights and mindset schemes that are valid but belong to our mindset and belong to a world that represents the past. So what would be the risk? The risk of taking this innovative regulation and try to interpret regulation with logics that belong to the past, that led us to what we are today. So that's a big risk, not because we might have a product placed on the market or not, or better competitive or less competitive. It's the risk of losing an opportunity that is emerging right now. And I think we have to overcome that twofold vision, this contraposition between drug and medical device. That's not the scenario that we are analyzing right now. The point is try to understand when it is a drug, when it is a medical device, with a strong awareness of what is the regulation and what are the features of the products that we are developing. If we do this exercise, we will have an opportunity that is enshrined in the European regulation, because the European regulation has a very strong future projection. It was not by chance that it was discussed in 2012. It was approved in 2017. In this room, we have participants who followed the whole debate at the Parliament in a very balanced way, knowing that it was not a matter of having one party or another to win. It was laying down the foundations for an innovative approach in a care sector that is pivotal, because again, it's not a matter of saying or to oppose to alternate to something. It's a matter of proposing new solutions, and these new solutions can be received only if we realize that there is something new and we act humbly, wondering if the information we have today is complete and is sufficient to tackle the future years of development in the industry. If we are capable of doing this, probably many of the questions we are asking today will automatically be out of date, and probably we will find new ways to redesign a mental scheme, a world, and a therapeutical offer that is going to keep pace with what today, as we said, is the people's demand. The patient's bed, the famous bed of the patient, requires not alternative products to drugs or efficient alternative products. They ask for products that, thanks to their specificities, can treat pathologies that today cannot be cured with a pure pharmacological approach. We are going to talk about this with a panel of experts who followed the whole regulatory journey with important industrial representatives. Having with us Paradin, Vice Director, General Director of AGP, that's the European Self-Care Industry, the Association of European Self-Care Industry, who has followed this dossier since the very beginning, and then Fernanda Gelona. I would like to invite her to come here at the panel, General Director of Confindustria, and also with Mr. Roberto Kranz, General Director of the Association, the German Pharmaceutical Association, and Michael Popp, who is an important member of this association. Just a few more remarks to stress the concept of medical device. The regulation we are talking about this morning is completely totally reshaping the rules of the game. In order to understand to what extent it is true, just think at the new regulations items. First of all, for this kind of product, the first class is going to disappear, class 1, which was objectively a flaw in the system, because a loophole, because it allowed for other devices, for these kinds of product, it allowed to enter the market with controls that were not suitable to that kind of products. And this created many frictions in the different strategies in the industry. It raised the notified body criteria, and this was a target that has been achieved very important. Those who judge have to be highly qualified and skilled to guarantee efficacy and safety. The regulation involved regulatory agencies, being it European ones or national ones, since we deal with products that have highly innovative features. It strengthened clinical evidence criteria necessary to launch, to trade a product. And the regulation set certain restrictions in terms of post-marketing surveillance that reach a very high standard. So thinking that there is a continuity between the past world of medical devices and the new frontier as from May 2020 would be a mistake. And so those who object by saying that this sector can have companies enter which do not invest in research, this is no longer like this. So we have to restart from this new picture and see how the system is going to evolve. And that's another topic. The definition of a medical device. We have seen it many times. The definition of medical device is quite straightforward. It says that a medical device is needed to treat, and it has to do that with non-immunological, non-metabolic, and non-pharmacological mechanisms of action. Substance-based medical devices up to date are known for the barrier effect, the anti-acid, anti-osmotic effect, and these are an important reality on the market, of course, that also for products like anti-acidic products could lead to a new innovation on the market. But here we have to start to wonder and to read the regulation and to ask, is there something more? What does pharmacological mean? What does immunological mean? What does metabolic mean? It means that I can only launch products that will have a barrier effect? Or if I interpret it in this way, I run the risk of losing some opportunities. These are whole sets of questions that we have to ask ourselves, thinking at what the future healthcare demand in the next years will be. And then the Rule 21, the famous Rule 21. And so regarding products that act locally at the level of the GI tract or the throat. But it's a very interesting point. The first indent of this rule. On this indent, the Parliament in the trilogue discussed for months, and they reached almost a block of the whole medical device dossier on this, because there was a strong political determination by the Parliament and the Commission, because of course it was a shared procedure to redesign a world that is not here today and to say, well, there are some substances that might have a therapeutical effect which do not act with a pharmacological action. These substances, we have two alternatives. Either these are cast aside of the system, and then we have a big problem in terms of public health, or we understand these substances, we try to study them at best, and we introduce these substances in the system. When we talk about products that, in order to work, must be absorbed, this is a category of products that is today difficult to be imagined, but these are products based on complex substances. I do not want to talk about natural substances anyway, complex substances whose action cannot be traced back to a single molecule, but a system of molecules interacting with our body system. So what's the classification of this kind of mechanism of action? Is it pharmacological? If we say this, we know that there is a missed opportunity because no one can register the product according to this criteria. So we as an industry, we have to ask ourselves if we want to grasp these opportunities or not. I would like to conclude by saying that this is under the spotlight. It's an interview published yesterday on Repubblica, an Italian magazine, newspaper, Timmermans, because today in Europe, everybody talk about Green New Deal, sustainable development for the environment. This is going to be the political line of the next years. 3,000 billion euros investments. So we have to wonder if, in this case, sustainable development is just for the automotive sector or cast iron sector, or if instead also the healthcare system is interested in this. In this case, probably substances that belong to the traditional world might play a priority role in the future. So we have to wonder again, in order to intercept this call for change that is very strong and underpins all political decision-making processes, the regulation of medical devices could actually represent a further opportunity. So just to tell you that it's important to share opinions at the industrial level with the goal of understanding what the future scenario will be in the next years. And in order to do that, we wanted to start from the European level and then to the Italian level and German level, which are two industrial systems that might not always agree, but actually do express an excellency that is recognized at the European level. So not only the sector of steel, but also the healthcare sector is fully involved. And I would like to leave the floor to Modin for the European perspective. Thank you.
Shall I stand here? Yeah. Thank you, Emiliano, for this introduction. So I'm going to speak in English. I would love to speak in Italian, but I'm completely unable to do that. So can I see my slides, please? Do I need to do something? Where? Okay, thank you very much. So first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. So AESGP is maybe not so well known at Italian level compared to obviously Confindustria Dispositivo Medici. I have a horrible accent for that. But so AESGP is the trade association representing the self-care industry. And so obviously our mission there is quite clearly to advance responsible healthcare and enable citizens to take better health of their health needs and contribute to the sustainability of the European healthcare systems. That's our global mission, but obviously today I will focus on the medical devices, but just I wanted to clarify what is the scope of ISGP, because obviously here the topic is medical devices, and we're going to talk a lot about borderline products. And as at ISGP, the core of what we do is actually representing three categories that have to basically operate in the level playing field and compete in a fair way on the market. So we represent the non-prescription medicines, the food supplement sector, and obviously the self-care medical devices. Okay. So I think I quote, okay. So just to confirm that indeed we have 23 national associations, and Confindustria is one of our members. So we are having really like a representation around Europe. And so here today, the goal for me is to give you a European perspective. I definitely don't know where to point at. Over there? Okay. Can I try? Italian. So you point for me? I don't know. Let's do that. So I think I will make it short on this one because I think in the morning session, yeah, indeed. So, yeah, this one. It went too quickly now. Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to give a quick perspective on the self-care medical devices market. And as a first sentence on that, I want to say that if you don't see their European figures per se, it's because actually it's really difficult to get European figures on this market. As we have been discussing this since this morning, this is really developing, not too quickly. This is still on this slide. You see, it's going too quickly. Sorry, Emiliano. I will try to do it. Okay. And manage all the things. That's going to work. So I wanted to give potentially EU figures, but as I said, it's not easy to get figures because this is an emerging kind of market in terms of market data. And traditionally in the self-care space, the data are always more by therapeutical indication. And when it comes to, let's say, non-medicinal products, the perception of the market is obviously much more national because we also have differences of classification of similar products, etc. So here, obviously, also knowing that after my talk, I have two of my members talking and they will present their national situation. I just wanted to give a short flavor of some of the other markets that we have. So a couple of figures that are a bit of a pears and apples, but just give a flavor. For the UK, we have 125 and a bit more than that branded self-care medical devices on the market. If we try to turn into actual value of the market, in the Netherlands, recent figures from our Dutch member turns into 80 million euros per year. So it's about 11% of the Dutch self-care market. If we turn a bit now to Spain and we look a bit at the recent figures for the dermatologic self-care medical devices space, we are about 29 million euros per year. In the ophthalmic space, 137 million a year. And now I give more of a value in percentage of increase for the French market, which is about 10% in value and 8.4% in volume between September last year and September this year. So it's just a really short flavor of what it is because, as I said, it's more of a case by case at national level that we need to look at the figures. But definitely the potential is there, and as it has been said, and I'm just reinforcing that, the MDR is a turn, and now we are close to the application date, so we hope it will deliver. So this slide, I will not elaborate too much because I think the morning session was already quite clear on what it brings, but I just want to highlight indeed that as a clear concept that we always want to highlight is that the MDR is changing the game as well for substance-based devices, which obviously will have to comply with stricter rules. And without elaborating on them, it's always still important to say that obviously it's a game changer in terms of perception as well of the medical devices framework. So ISGP was actively engaged in the legislative process of this regulation, And obviously, Italy was quite instrumental as part of the Council and obviously of the Parliament as well in getting this famous Rule 21. So for AHCP, it was definitely a success per se, because we finally, even though there were a lot of substance-based devices on the market before, that's a real recognition in the text that it actually exists and can comply with the medical devices definition. Nonetheless, even though we have a great text per se, and it was an achievement, a text is nothing if it doesn't actually become implementable, and that's the whole question that we have today. So I'm going to pass this one because I think we've been saying quite a lot about what it is. So a couple of examples that, so without naming branded products, but to give a bit of an examples of the type of products that we are representing. So the anti-flatulence products, eye drops, nasal spray, intimate lubricants, moisturizing cream, laxative capsules, throat pastilles. And here I highlight that obviously those are examples, because depending on what is in there, what is claimed on that product and how they act, they may not be devices, but many of them are. So here, and definitely if the MDR is basically a tool for innovating in the space, what is really now the challenges for us as an industry to implement it and to basically unlock the potential of the text is notably the transitional periods, because as it has been said as well this morning, still many products in the substance-based devices are going to be up-classified, which means that they will have to be certified. And obviously, looking at the notified body capacity that we discussed this morning with Mrs. Marco Aldi, and obviously this is not an Italian problem, but a European problem, this is a big challenge. Then, in addition to that, and I will potentially develop a bit further, is obviously the need for expertise, because this is potentially for many notified bodies completely new, and I think Mrs. Marco Aldi this morning was really clear about that. This is a new code, even in the designation process. It has been requiring specific, let's say, new recruits and skills in the staffing of the notified bodies, but it's potentially still not sufficient, not only because of the notified bodies designated, but also because potentially what we think will be sufficient will not appear to be sufficient when we actually really want to certify. So let's see how much expertise and skills we need more. Then, obviously, I'd like to focus more on borderline and classification to give the perspective of the industry, and to potentially also go also on what it means in terms of quality and safety, because we heard about a lot of questions that are currently under discussion at European level. So I want to give a flavor of our industry position at European level. So just quickly on the traditional periods, here definitely we also heard from the Commission this morning about what is currently in the pipeline. I think one of the key challenges for us now is really to make sure, and this is not only for the substance-based, but obviously for the whole devices industry, but for us it's definitely relevant, is to make sure that also the certified substance-based devices that have been on the market so far can remain on the market for the transitional periods and be recertified, which is becoming challenging as well, because for the notified body to recertify, in addition to certify under MDR, is really a big hurdle. Then the other thing I just wanted to focus on is that indeed, in terms of the focus currently of the notified bodies, we have heard a lot about all the questions that are coming up, and since we are waiting for the MDR designation, obviously the possibility for them to, to agree on other interpretation issues is also a challenge. So borderline and classification. So here, and I was really glad with Mrs. Marco Aldi's speech this morning, because that's definitely my slide, so it's perfect. So basically, what is really important for us, because it's basically how you start the whole process once you have designed a product, you have an innovative product based on substances. The basic question you have to ask yourself is, what is it? Under which legal definition does it fit? And that's what is the question on the regulatory status. And I think Mrs. Marco Aldi was really clear on that. To be honest, I would love that everybody in the medical devices system would think like Mrs. Marco Aldi, but unfortunately, it's not exactly the case. And we still, and you as industry manufacturers, have a lot of challenges in that regard. So for us, there is a problem up front, but okay. The main question is the product a medical device? So basically the question is yes or no, and only after making sure that this is a device, the question is about the risk class. And so for us as IAGP, we have been always engaged a lot because since we represent those three categories, we potentially have borderlines as well with biocides and cosmetics. But in the space of the three categories already, there is a lot to discuss. And so evidently, we really want to be involved in all those debates and represent the industry to be able to engage as stakeholders with the regulators at every step possible to make sure that, let's say, wrong decisions that are not evidence-based or that are not legally grounded could not happen. And importantly, I think this morning, and I will not elaborate myself on the Cranberry case, but obviously we were involved in that case as well. What is really important is to always remember that there are still a legal framework that applies to the classification. And there are a number of court cases at European level that have been elaborated a lot on what it means to assess that and how should it be done. And the key criteria is always do a case-by-case assessment. And a case-by-case assessment means looking at a single product. And I insist on that. It's not looking at 10 products that looks like the same thing. It's looking at each of them individually, the way they are made, the formulation, the way they are presented, etc., to determine whether it is scientifically established that they have pharmacological, immunological, or metabolic properties or not, and then to determine what is the principal mode of action, independent of the effect, because we know that many products have potentially a pharmacological effect, but they don't act pharmacologically. So the cornerstone of all that is, as we've been discussing, and you mentioned it many times earlier, definitions. We need a definition. There is today in the European corpus of law no definition of pharmacological, immunological, and metabolic means. The only place where it is a device guidance, which is currently a revision, and which obviously, since it's the cornerstone of the whole borderline discussion, needs a lot of discussion to go in the depth to make sure that it all makes sense and enables all the framework to live in parallel so that all legislation can coexist in a coordinated manner. So here, as IHGP, and we are quite glad because I think Mr. Kuntos this morning confirmed, and he confirmed that it was confirmed anyway, we will have discussions on PIM definitions with regulators as soon as we get the feedback on the current consultation. And so we are definitely looking for those discussions to be able to discuss on examples, because there is no conceptual discussion that could be really useful. We need to discuss concretely. Then on the rules. So, okay, we have a devices, it's made of substances. Is it only a Rule 21? Response is clearly no. So we still have a lot of questions. If you have a device which is made of substances, Rule 21 is obviously to take into account, but you have many others. We heard this morning about Rule 14, which basically applies to devices that contains an ancillary medical substance. And obviously here the debate is quite difficult because we have to discuss, and I also heard Mrs. Marco-Ali stressing a lot of important points. We have to clarify what was the intention of the legislator when they slightly changed that wording. And that's apparently not clear for everybody right now, so we need to discuss about all of that and to agree at European level. So on the industry side, we have, as IESGP with our members, and obviously Confindustria was part of it, and BAH in Germany as well, we have developed position papers on notably Rule 21, Rule 14, to push forward what is, we think, the most appropriate interpretation with some examples. And here again, since it's a case-by-case assessment, we're just looking to discuss that concretely with regulators so that we can have guidances that make sense, that are useful, and that makes the MDR actually achieve its objective. In terms of skills and expertise, I still always want to highlight that because in those debates on borderline, traditionally it's perceived that if you have a pharmacology background, then it's actually enough to assess a substance-based device. Here, clearly, the response is no. So we need new type of competencies, where obviously being a pharmacist is a huge asset, but you need also a lot of biomedical science and potentially molecular biology background to be able to understand how a device acts. And it's not looking at each molecule individually, but also having the perception of what is a matrix effect and all those concepts, which are not traditionally conceptualized in assessing medicinal products. So this requires a new type of skills, which potentially industry is looking for heavily. Regulators, notified body, everybody is competing for that. So we need to potentially also adjust the way people in the medical space are potentially trained to recognize those modes of action. Then to conclude, I think here on the part of at the European level, and before giving the floor to the National Association, I think here I definitely want to say that the MDR is an opportunity for the substance-based devices. It should definitely allow products that are innovative and that are potentially aiming to target specific conditions and that are not acting pharmacologically, immunologically, or with metabolic means. Then they will not see the light and see the market, because normally they are not food and they are not medicine. So the whole question is indeed, for those products that meet the definition, how can we make sure that they can get on the market? Because as Mrs. Marletta was saying this morning, if they don't, or if we make it too difficult because we ask ADME profiles on the safety for sodium chloride, for instance, basically people would just withdraw the claim and make them just general product on the market, which would not what we would favor. So faster designation of notified bodies able to actually work on our products, recertification of those that are certified today to help them to stay on the market before they can be MDR certified. Obviously, guidances that could help and that can actually deliver and allow those products to exist and not make the Rule 21 becoming basically a non-rule or a non-existing rule. And obviously engaging with stakeholders as early as possible with the regulators and notified body, because it's only in those discussions, and as industry you may face that it's only when you discuss on your specific product that you have a way forward. Building relevance, resources and expertise, I think I was quite already elaborating on it. And on the UDAMED, because obviously this will have an impact, like we discussed this morning, for our sector. Thank you very much.
Grazie molto. Grazie.
Thank you. Just a brief remark. It's quite evident that, first of all, I think we have to thank your organization for the work that you've been carrying out for many years at the European level on the sector of DMS. And the way in which you're following all the implementation acts of this regulation that are quite a few. It's clear that every time we embrace a new sector, the questions and the things that have to be maximized are a lot. So among all the things that you have raised, there are two kinds of problems. The problem of the definition and the issue of the authorization, the implementation. So the problem of definitions, so what product is to be considered a medical device or not, that's a core theme of the whole issue. It's not easy to define the medical device, but what we can hope for, as I said, to have a humble approach to this situation. Because if the European Parliament for months has been debating a rule, and at the tables that today, the technical tables that today are important, it is difficult to identify even a single product that could be classified in accordance with the first indent of the rule. Well, maybe there's something wrong in this. So objectively, we have an opportunity which is not easy to take, to grasp, but there is this opportunity. And so, to me, we should restart by the definition of what is pharmacological and ask specifically for complex substances like cranberry. Cranberry, is it So besides from how we define it, is it a product to which a no pharmacological mechanism of action can be ascribable because it's not reconducible to a specific substance contained in the product? Because if we are capable, regardless of our way of thoughts, to be precise on what's the opportunity of these innovations in this sector for these complex substances products, being it natural, but first of all complex substances, maybe we will understand that the ongoing debate today is reasoning with assessment criteria that are of the pharmacological side. And it's not possible to define what is not pharmacological, moving from the conceptual schemes of what is pharmacological. We have to introduce something new in this reasoning. And all the research programs today, which follow all the words that we heard also by MP Tajani, now can allow us to lay down the foundations for a new knowledge based on evidence-based medicine, but also open to what might be the properties of complex natural substances or complex substances in general. If we are capable of having this understood at the important tables, we are raising a very important opportunity. Now Fernanda Gelona has the floor describing the situation, the Italian situation. Thank you. Thank you, Emiliano. Yes, I would say that we have talked a lot this morning, this day, about the problems related to the new regulation. Well, now I would like to give a glance to the industry of these products, as we said this morning. So which companies are we referring to and what are the figures? So moving from medical devices industry as a whole, and so Confindustria Dispositivi Medici represents this sector, we talk about 5,000 companies, more than 76,000 employees, more than 11 billion turnover. So it's a sector, the one of medical in vitro diagnostic devices, that has nothing to envy to other sectors that are more widely known in the community as considered as more precious. We also have other characteristics like a very high rate of education among our employees, given the sector. We have a strong presence of women in-house. So again, as a sector, from this point of view, we try to be really at the forefront. And so this sector in Italy, for example, as the first European biomedical hub producing plastic. So maybe we have not been levied the plastic tax, because to understand where we operate in the budget law on the issue of plastic tax, and also the green economy and climate changes, so tax on plastic. Of course, we have to work all proactively to eliminate plastic. This is, of course, true. And in the budget law, overnight, people said that this tax is applied with the exception of disposable plastic syringe. So automatically, all the other plastic devices, for medical devices, for disposable devices, was subject to this levy. Catheters, dialysis bags, infusion bags, this was crazy because unfortunately today we do not have alternative materials to plastic to produce these medical devices, which are disposed in a certain way. Anyway, we solved this issue apparently, but I'm telling you this detail because on the one hand, we want to draft laws to protect the environment with the new regulation to protect the patients, but sometimes, just for the sake of protecting our users, we make mistakes and we want to recover these mistakes with new regulations. Anyway, let's go back to our topic. In Italy, this sector, what does it represent?
Hola. Allora, farmaci e dispositivi medici. Parliamo di prodotti.
Drugs and medical devices. We are just debating what they are all about. They have the same indication of use, the same purpose of use, but different action mechanisms. We repeat it. We've been repeating that for the whole day, so I'm not going into the details of this. Of course, we need to have a case-by-case approach based on clinical evidence. I will find a way to manage these slides. Okay, so more than 4,000 companies operating in the supply chain of medical devices. In MDMS, we have 600 companies for a market that is worth more than 950 million euros, with a market share, a very important market share, accounting for 28%, 75.4 millions of pieces sold per year, accounting for 22% of the overall market share for this kind of use purposes. And of course, we see that today also the big pharmaceutical companies are starting to be present on this market. You can see here mentioned some companies which do not need to be introduced at all. So if we analyze this market, of course, it is growing. Here we can see how the percentage of MDMS has increased compared to the OPCs, millions of euro, and prices are reported accordingly, the values and volumes on the slide. So as you can see, these figures are absolutely relevant, important. So this sector is expanding constantly. It's a constantly evolving market that is paying back the patients, moving from 331 million euros in 2010 to about, as I said, more than 950 million in 2019. The number of references that have been classified as medical devices is apparently increasing, has more than doubled over these years. From 1002, we went to 2,620. Only in 2019, about 190 new references were launched as medical devices. So you can see that these figures actually confirm the positive trend, the increasing opportunity of this market. As you can see, the share of medical devices also graphically is showing this upward trend. So this is an innovation opportunity. As you can see, we wanted to take some pictures of brands and packagings that you all know in the chemist shops. You find these products. So the goal is to state that these products, of course, are now drawing the attention of the biggest pharmaceutical multinationals, not only the Italian ones, but also the foreign ones. Outside of Italy, well, in Italy we could gather this data. Outside of Italy, we do not know reliable sources to provide this kind of data. But we have asked the license to treat a specific issue, that the Sanofi Europe case, which has a cooperation in licensing with Aboca. So also in the rest of Europe, we can see that medical devices, MDMS, and medical devices as well, we reported that also the export of national products is very important. And we also analyzed Germany, and then the colleague from Germany is going to dwell on Germany more specifically. But we've seen that also in Germany, we are witnessing some important cases. We took a specific case, the cough case in Italy, to show you how the market has grown in Italy. In 2011, 66% were drugs, mucolytic drugs, and the medical device was just a small residual share, accounting for 7%. In 2019, 8 years later, as you can see, the share of medical devices grew up to 24%. And again, this is also graphically evident of how this kind of products can grow. And here we have seen, once again, data from 2010 compared to 2019, the expansion of OTC drugs and medical devices. For the cough use case, I think that it is quite relevant. And it's a study case that is quite important. So what does it mean? It means that there is a strong expansion going on. 80 references, 25 launched in the last year. All the main multinationals, as we have seen, have penetrated this market. And many companies, not the Italian ones, have here in Italy an important market share for MDs and DMS. So this means that our country is open to this kind of innovations. Some products can be traded here if it is too difficult in the country of origin. And this is a positive trend. There is a sound competition, a good competition that should not be hindered, as we said this morning, by legislative provisions that might somehow impair the dissemination of these products. So from this point of view, once again, the choice of physicians on the one hand, but most of all, the users, is self-evident. And also talking about other kinds of medical devices, if the final user, the citizen, the patient can choose, that's the sound competition, because, of course, the patient knows whether that substance, that medical device is working or not. And if it has a certain level of efficacy, he or she is going to buy that product. It's self-evident. So for the sake of time, I'd like to draw my conclusion by saying that market figures are important as they show up, as we said this morning, a sound industry that is investing, that is creating job opportunities, as we've seen, and is creating culture. And I think that in the world of medical devices, being that they originate from a combination of knowledge of every kind, the world of culture, science, knowledge is extremely important. So once again, let's support strict regulations, but these regulations have to be suitable. Let's welcome a responsive market that welcomes innovation, because that's the actual core mission of this industry and this product. So let's support this data. Hopefully this market is growing. And so in a moment in which we have to provide answers to many health needs and well-being needs, yesterday we talked about aesthetic medicines, the many needs of well-being and health, we have to provide a safe answer in terms of products, a suitable answer in terms of distribution and quality. And I think that the Italian market is at the forefront in this regard, and we hope to keep on with this performance. Thank you.
Grazie Fernanda. Inviterei a
Thank you, Fernanda. I invite to the floor Mr. Kranz, who is the Director General of the BAH, and he was Director General AGP, and so he knows the approval ITER. So.
It's a great pleasure to be here today, and I would like to thank you, first of all, not only for the invitation, but also for bringing us here all together, because I think we all have a very strong interest, and that there is a lot of interest, the number here shows, and I'm sure there are more on web stream who are following us in the debate here. And I also would like to thank you for the occasion to expose the German situation. I think this is not only our Italian-German friendship, it is also, I think, because both markets have a strong interest in this topic, but particularly also in natural substances. And while the debate here is more in general on substance-based medical devices, logically, and therefore I will also refer to this, there is a particular element also with regard to natural substances, herbal substances in all this discussion. And I would like to explain a little bit also in this context the German situation. Before doing though, let me say a few words about the organization I'm asked to represent here today. So BAH is an organization which is fairly old, 1954, in the year when Germany became the world champion in football, as you may remember. The ordinary members are a wide range really of companies. So we have the globally operating companies, all the multinational companies, both on the innovation side as well as on the self-care side. We have a very high number of small and medium-sized companies. And indeed, the German market, you may say, is still characterized also by a particularly high number of companies in this field. And Mr. Michael Popp, who will speak later on, you can regard as one of the top representatives, particularly also of this sector. Then we have the generic companies also in our organization, which are particularly looking at the technical services we provide. And then we have all the kind of more specialized groups and also in the homeopathic field, anthroposophic medicines. But we also have, and this has been indeed also growing, not only in Italy, also in Germany, the area of medical devices, including substance-based medical devices. And in some way, our most recent development was a move into so-called digital health applications. So we have changed the articles of our association in order to include also all the apps and wearables producers. Often there are also companies in our sector, because practically all of them are also looking at ways to benefit from the developments in the digital field in the sense of improving their product presentation. And by that also we included this in the scope of our activities. In addition to this, we have a wide-ranging group of associate members, consultancies, law firm, publishing houses, and by that we are regarded as the biggest industrial organization in the healthcare sector in Germany. So here you see our hopefully nice offices on the left side in Bonn. Bonn traditionally is our kind of headquarters. There we have 35 employees, full-time employees, primarily in the technical field. The reason also for keeping Bonn is it's very near to the Institute for Drugs and Medical Devices, which is also located in Bonn. But we have also 17 people located in Berlin, which you know is the capital, and by that more the place of the political action. My personal life is between the two. Every week practically I'm at both places and combine the activities of both organizations. Yes, I would like to say a few words on the self-care market in Germany. And you will see there are some parallels to the situation in Italy, which were so well explained a moment ago, but there are also some important differences. So the total market size of what we regard as the self-care market, so of products which are legally available without a prescription, independent now from legal categories, and which may be sometimes also prescribed or at least recommended by a medical doctor. So this market, according to the leading market research organization, is quantified in the range of a bit more than 10 billion euros. From this 10 billion euros, you may say it's a small share, but it's a significant share of 8%. So 869 million euros are in what we classify as substance-based medical devices. And if you remember the presentation before, this figure is fairly near to the Italian figure. So there's not a big difference. The big difference, however, is in the market share. Yeah? The market share in Italy has been, as I learned a moment ago, tremendously growing. This has not been the case like this, not in this dimension. It has been also growing, but it is not on a level now of 28% market share from the total sector. It is on 8% in comparison to this, so the wide range is still products which are not substance-based medical devices, so they are primarily non-prescription medicines, sometimes also other legal categories. So within the area of substance-based medical devices, the leading brands are those which you see here on this picture. And this is a very heterogeneous group. So it really reaches from macrogol to an iron oxide-based product, which you can use as an anti-aromatic. You have certain bacteria-based, I call it now, products, and you have also products in the area, let's say, of lozenges with different ingredients, often a mix of ingredients. So a very heterogeneous group of products. Some of them, which were sometimes medicines in the past, but did not manage the review, which were a legal obligation out of a European legislation of 1975. Others were newly introduced. Somewhere you may say a kind of redundancy, somewhere part of a very well thought through business strategy and innovative policy. So a very heterogeneous market. In light of the interest we are all having here in herbal substances, I would also like to show you now some corresponding figures to the herbal market in Germany. So the total market size is again the same. It's again the 10 billion euro, a little bit more of this. So within this market, you have around 17-18%, so a little bit more than 1.7 billion euro products which can be classified as herbal products. So products which are primarily based on herbal substances. The rest are logically non-herbal products. But within this category of herbal products, and there you see now a big difference to maybe our situation in Italy and the one or the other country, only 2% are substance-based herbal products. So only 38 million euros in the German market are related to substance-based herbal products. And the leading brands in this context, you see here, it's primarily a product with Lichen Islandicus. So this is one of the examples of products which were in the history, at least in some forms, medicines, but which did not manage to show their pharmacological effect, but could show a physical chemical effect and could by that be classified in the category of substance-based medical products. And therefore they are today in this form on the market. One of the leading brands is a mixture, again, of a very wide range of ingredients, aromatic substances, but you may also regard it primarily as a herbal product. So this is in very rough terms the market situation in Germany. And now I could stop in some way and leave the rest to Michael Popp, but I still would like to say a few words on this other element in the German market, which are the herbal medicines. Because without sharing this information, I think it's not possible to really understand the German market situation and also somewhat not the dynamics of the German market situation. But before doing that, let me say, fundamentally for the substance-based medical devices in Germany, the situation is identical to what you heard until now here today. So you have heard this morning all the problems with regard to capacity of notified bodies, with regard to how to draw the borderline between a medicine, a medical device, a case-by-case decision, and all the challenges also more just presented to you. So this fully applies. We are good Europeans in Germany, of course. So this also applies with all their problems and also the German market. What has so far not been explained is really this other element, which is important to understand the German market. And this is the fact that many herbal products, as you saw in the statistics also, are not substance-based medical devices, but are classified as herbal medicinal products. So the manufacturer has to show the quality, safety, and efficacy through an application within the German Institute for Medicines and Medical Devices. And once this is done, you have to go then through a process in which, based on the European legislation, you have to follow the key requirements in two areas. And that's important to know, otherwise it's again difficult to catch the German market. The one is what we call a Zulassung, which is a kind of normal marketing authorization. And the other part is the registration process, which is primarily linked to a traditional use of the product. So let me say a few words on this and explain that a little bit. The marketing authorization, or well-established use also, is fundamentally the normal marketing authorization like you have it for every medicine. So you have to show, yes, in a lighter way, but still you have to show efficacy and safety based on pharmacological, toxicological, and clinical data. In the case of a registration, you only, quoting mark, have to show 30 years of experience. All this you can do by referring to the monographs of the European Medicines Agency. And what has to be done for every product, besides the safety and efficacy, is to show the quality according to standards which are the same. They are the same for both kinds of product categories. A few words more on these two elements in order to illustrate a little bit and to make it a little bit clearer. So when you are in well-established use, the applicant shall not be required to provide the results of preclinical tests or clinical trials if he can demonstrate that the active substances of the medicinal product have been in well-established medicinal use within the community, European community, for at least 10 years, with a recognized efficacy and an acceptable level of safety. Traditional use, there you see, is the key word, that you don't have to make this kind of full proof, but you only have to show that the pharmacological effects or the efficacy of the medicinal product are plausible on the basis of a long-term use and experience. And this situation has led now from the number of products to this situation, which you see here in the most recent statistics of the German IFA, of the German Institute for Medicines and Medical Devices. So with regard to the first category of the well-established, the normal or fully proved herbal medicines, you have 1,171 products marketed, and you have in the area of traditional herbal medicines a considerable lower number of 286 products on the market. Let me conclude by just saying one word still on the reference to the European level. So for us, it has been always important to follow the work of the Herbal Medicinal Products Committee, which, as you may know, for the time being is chaired also by a representative of the Italian authorities. So this is one of the permanent committee at the European Medicines Agency. That's relatively important. That's not only a working group, but it's something which is based and integrated in the European law. And they have a clear mandate, and they have a composition then based on representatives of member states, and also additional expertise in certain specific areas is represented through 5 additional experts. And this German system, as explained, is very much reflected in the European system, or the other way around. The European system then is influencing the German system. So this separation of well-established use products and traditional products, and all this, if you want, this European work is at the end the basis for the German system of herbal medicinal products. So it's very much related also to European system, like evidently also the system of medical devices is integrated in a European system. So with this, I hope I could give you a short overview on the situation, and I thank you very much.
Grazie, Mr. Kranz. Invito a parlare.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Michael Popp as far as the German situation is concerned.
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the invitation, especially also to Dr. Grant, who convinced me to give a short presentation. So I'm the owner of a leading herbal pharmaceutical company in Germany in turnover and also in units. We market more than 20 million units of herbal medicine, but medicine on the German market, but as well more than 20 million units in Russia as real medicine. We are market leader in a lot of countries all over the world. We are thinking globally, and we develop our herbal medicine for the global markets as well-established medicines. So for me, a medical device you see here is, you see the images on the pictures. Also, it's the wrong direction. No, it goes back. Okay. Yeah, it's a new regulation for the medical device. Normally, it was not intended that it's for substance-based medical devices, but at the other side, it was a reclassification because the substance-based medical device they need to show safety. Very important is, and you mentioned already cranberry, and for us it's very important that the European Commission decided August 2017 that cranberry products are not medical devices because they contain pharmacological active proanthocyanidins. They contain these ingredients, and with this they prevent or treat cystitis. So that means they are not medical devices, they are pharmaceuticals, and we don't understand why these cranberry products, if they should be pharmaceuticals, because they act pharmacological, why they still on the market in Europe, in France, in Italy, in Germany, even as food supplements with unproven health claims. And we know why, because the European Commission didn't publish or approve the list for botanicals made from the EFSA. And you know maybe this list of botanicals should be published or become law since March 2010. And because of this, we have this not organized market. Yeah. Okay, but now we have a regulation for the substance-based medical devices, and yeah, I think it's a good situation because we have a class 3 classifying, and you need to bring additional toxicological, pharmacokinetic, and clinical trials. They are required, and you have to show them to the notified body, and the notified body must seek a scientific opinion from a competent authority. The competent authority is maybe your IFA here in Italy, or is the EMA, now in Amsterdam. So, because of this, the manufacturers of substance-based medical devices will face more scrutiny during the confirmation process. And yeah, so I think what is the advantage or disadvantage between a medical device or a medicinal product? I think the requirements are almost the same in the future, because you need clinical evidence, you need clinical trials, you have to show the safety, you need the quality. You have also to invest a lot of money in these clinical trials to show the pharmacological action. So, and I don't know how to do as medical device producer to balance whether you are a pharmaceutical or a medical device based on substances. And I think the EMA has the same idea, because this is a slide of the EMA, and also the EMA expects from medical devices based on substances that you have toxicological, pharmacological, and most important, the clinical evidence for this product. So, if you see the requirements, I think there's for class 3 medical devices no difference. This is also a chart from the EMA. So you need to show the safety, the efficacy, so you have the same requirements. So why not to submit your documents for a medicinal product, for herbal pharmaceutical? You have the same IP protection. Even you have data protection for 10 years if you don't have an IP protection, if you don't have a patent. You have a chance to have very strong claims. You are a pharmaceutical, and here you see one example. You can get the approval through DCP procedures, MRP procedures, through whole Europe, like for one product, even a well-established approval now in Italy, or another product also all over Europe, and also now approved by the IFA as well in Italy. So, in my opinion, a medicinal product has more advantages than a medical device, because I think you have to invest almost the same amount of money. You have the same data protection, maybe even more, because you have minimum, if it's a new product, innovative product, you have 10 years data protection, maybe even you have a patent, like we have to some of our products. And maybe in Italy not, but in the most markets outside Italy, a medicinal product has a higher reputation as a medical device, and you don't have to make this balance act. And I think, we know, because in all the markets where we are, we market our product through the physicians, especially to the special physicians, to the ENT physicians, pediatricians, gynecologists, urologists, and through the pharmacists. They trust a real medicine, I think, more than a medical device. Now I'm looking forward to discuss with you. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pop. A remark here. It's evident that the regulatory issue can be interpreted from a competitive viewpoint or from a scientific viewpoint. From the competitive point of view, it's evident that in Europe there are products that in certain countries are classified as drugs, in others food supplements, from the very same companies. So we'd leave aside the consideration of what is best and what is worst from this point of view. The interesting thing, and I go back to your final question, is why a medical device based on substances? Well, maybe because today this criteria between a medical product and a medical device are the same. So it's a plus, it's not a minus. And being the requirements the same, today the great difference that we have seen in two systems is that the Italian perspective is that thanks to the new regulation, we can put on the market innovative products, because all the products that have been mentioned today, unfortunately, are products that are based on tradition or on well-established dossiers. So the question is, companies that are investing in research and innovation, can they thrive referring on the well-established use, on the traditional use, even worse, whereby maybe there is a regulation framework that might allow serious companies to bring on the market innovative products? Cranberry is a product that today is authorized by EMA monographs only as traditional medicinal product. So what's the difference, the real difference? To me, as a personal consideration, is that today we have the same criteria. So this could be an opportunity for serious companies to invest in the future and to describe the pharmacodynamic or pharmacokinetic mechanism and chemistry of these substances in a non-pharmacological context that has always limited the registration of these products as drugs. So in this, I see a possible evolution in this sector. I don't know if you agree with this consideration.
Yes. Yes.
That's very good. Yeah, no, but that could be.
But you mentioned it. But I think the European market has to be cleaned up because you mentioned just now. I have shown cranberry is not regarded as a medical device. You mentioned it's regarded as a traditional medicine. Yeah, so it's a medicine, it's a traditional medicine.
But probably can be something different in the future if we invest in research, in clinical, using a new approach. We can register this product as an innovative product covered by patents to be used to treat people.
Yes, I agree totally. And for example, we also do research on traditional medicines or on plants. They have a traditional use, a traditional registration. Why we do research? We invest really millions of euros in clinical evidence, and after that we are sure that we get a real marketing authorization as real medicine for that. So it's very easy. So if the cranberry producer would invest a lot of money, has their own special extract, maybe they have their own clone, because we develop our own clone for each plant we use. So we have our own species, only BioNorica has. So we have our own raw material. We have our own production process, also patented. We have a unique product. We get the marketing approval for a product, and you have data protection. And the positive thing is, for example, in Germany, you don't get the generic approval for a herbal product because our FDA, the BfArM, learned already that generics of evidence-based phytopharmaceuticals are not possible because you have two steps. You have a raw material. It can't be identical because we have our own raw material. We have our own production process. So it's more complicated than biosimilar. So we call it phytosimilar. And you're pretty much protected. For us, I think it's the better way to be protected and acknowledged by the healthcare system.
Yes, but at the end of the day, in your product is written that the clinical efficacy of this product is based only on traditional. You are investing a lot of money, you have the know-how to develop innovative products, and you are competing with other companies which do not invest the same amount of research in the traditional field, because the legislation is clear. You don't need the clinical evidence. You don't need pharmacodynamic and pharmacokinetic properties. You do, but it's your strategy. So the question is, we all believe that natural substances can play a role for the future of the therapy in Europe and outside Europe. Probably the medical device regulation can be an opportunity to register product under a not pharmacological approach, but with the same standards that we are currently using in terms of clinical and efficacy to register drugs. So I believe that this could be an opportunity. It's not easy, and I think that now we have to open the discussion also to the, but it could be an opportunity. Please.
If I may just add one point, I think it's not really just an either or. Yes? So I think from our perspective, it's really something which can go hand in hand. And you have situations where the one approach is the more relevant or appropriate one, and then you have other situations. And I guess the markets, as you say, are developing. The overall interest we all have is to develop innovation also, to have innovation in this field. And I think we have to be fair also, while we are living in a European system, we still have a lot of differences in this sector. And how to realize innovation is unfortunately maybe not possible in the same way in every market. And therefore you may come also to different conclusions, yes, when you look at the single markets. What I think still is relevant is that the overall interest is the same. I think we can fully subscribe to the, let's say, also to the title of your meeting and the overall philosophy, yes, that we want to stimulate innovation in this field. We want to have new products on the market. And yes, and then there are different considerations how to realize that. But that's a good thing for these kind of meetings to discuss that.
Thank you.
Just go.
Okay. I think I will just add, obviously, from a European perspective, my standpoint will be that obviously as ISGP we will not take any specific position because there are a lot of intercultural background and tradition behind. But here I would just like to make a legal point there so that obviously we should not forget that I think in the same sense that we cannot favor one system or another, there is potentially a system which is fit for every single product again, case by case. And I'm always legally uncomfortable when we try to simplify, even though simplification would be sometimes better for innovation, I guess. But from a legal perspective at EU level, I don't think we will ever simplify in having potentially a plant considered as forever pharmacologically active or not. And that's potentially where the culture at European level and between member states could evolve in recognizing that indeed for every product there is potentially a different framework, even though it comes from the same plant. That's just the legal point I would like to make.
Ci sono domande?
Are there further questions? Microphone, please.
Just a second. Yeah. Sandra.
I just want to add something with respect to bringing into the market of herbal medicinal products. We talked about well-established use, which requires 10 years of well-established medicinal use in the European Union, and we talked about tradition. But of course, there's also another option. If you want to invest really money in clinics and preclinical research and development, you can also choose a full application. Full application means you create your own data, and therewith you get, of course, also data protection, and you also get, of course, a period of at least 10 plus 1 years for a non-competitive season for your product for marketing. So it's comparable. I think we are talking about two different approaches, having in mind substance-based medical devices, on the other side medicinal products. We also have to keep in mind, of course, that the medicinal plants we are talking about, they are described for many, many decades, even centuries, for their pharmacological action. They are described for their indications in the books of the European monasteries, etc. And we are to prove what's behind, but we are talking about pharmacology. We are talking about illnesses and diseases to treat.
No, that's clear. The problem is how can we demonstrate the mechanism of action under a pharmacological framework of complex substances like herbs. And we all know that we have a huge problem to demonstrate the mechanism of action, the pharmacodynamic and pharmacokinetics of mixture of substances in that framework. That's the reason why the other sector could be an opportunity, but of course this is under discussion. Prego. Sì, okay.
Fernanda, mi sono perso. Stiamo parlando.
We are talking about a European regulation, and traditional drugs are just part of the German reality. I'm a bit confused, excuse me. Can you explain to me where are we going? Because I've got lost, I think. We are trying to give information about two different situations, Germany and Italy. And in some cases, they didn't agree on how to set up some basis on these issues. The point of reference for everyone is the new regulation. That's a point of reference for everyone, regardless of what each country within their own debates, national debates with the different stakeholders are going to address. Of course, we are all equal before the European regulation. And as Dakunto was saying in the morning, because we don't want to create differentiations in the way all the countries perceive the regulation. In comparison to the old directives, these are going to be not directives, but regulations, because regulations don't need national perceptions, national acceptance. So the difference between directive and regulation is important. That's why they decided to create the regulation, the European regulation that will need all the European countries in full compliance. All will have to agree and to fully comply with that. When the regulation has been defined and the text have been written, all the countries needed and still need to be fully in agreement. We will then have further guidelines and other implementation actions that are typical of regulations as a follow-up. Of course, every country is trying to play with the cards that he or she has in his own hands. So Italy can play a vital role, of course, because we have a lot of expertise at an institutional level. We've seen this in the morning with the ministries and also at an industrial level. There are many countries, many companies that invest on research and innovation. They can give a great contribution. But our goal here, of course, is quite clear. We have to go towards this direction. And the AESGP is playing a very important role, is following this regulation very carefully about these substances-based medical devices. And we are also part of the AESGP. And so that's our point, of course. Every other debate along the way are, of course, welcome. They are part of the confrontation. I think that being confronted, being able to discuss, we can have good outcomes and good new ideas. Of course, we have to have in mind the regulation, a strict rule that gives us a certain security and safety that guarantees these products to be alive and to be in the market. And I have to underline again that these are not drugs. And we have to give up. They are not drugs. That's it.
Grazie. L'ultima domanda.
Thank you. Last question. And then we
talk about the medical device based on substances and natural substances. The point that has not been discussed is that we are talking about complex substances. Therefore, the point is that if you want to have a full dossier registration, that it's almost impossible because there are not full dossier, they refer to whole plant. If you see all the new drugs are referred to isolated plants. We are talking about drug derived from plant, not based on plants. And the reason is written on the monograph, and it's also in the well-established, like for time, where it's written mechanism of action is not known, because you cannot describe pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics of a complex system, but only of some molecules. And this is the real point. So we are talking about drugs registered based on one molecule, but what about all the others? And I believe that the new medical device rules, it's the only one that would require to characterize the whole substance, the finished product. And this is very important because we are talking about the evidence of the whole product, not only about the molecule. This is the switch. And this is the real important point, I believe, to bring natural substances to the market, which is, from our industry, the key point. Because if not, we are on the same field of synthetic drugs. So this is, I believe, a very important point. I don't know what you think.
Any comments? Or we can close the session and we can go to the next one. Okay. Yeah.
But I think I agree with Dr. Grunz, with you. I think the most important is the patient at the end, who has some problems, to solve his problems. And so I'm looking forward for the class 3 substance-based medical device, because if the industry runs proper, like GCP, controlled, placebo-controlled, double-blind clinical trials to fulfill the requirements of a notified body. I think that these trials, this research supports the herbal industry, I would say, at one side. And if you have good results, it also in, for example, respiratory diseases, it would be very helpful because we can play an important role to reduce the antibiotic resistance, and you know this is a very high topic. So every good research on plants is welcomed, I think, by the patient and even by our governments and the health authorities.
Grazie, thank you. More?
Sorry, a very pragmatic concluding remark. Obviously, we are at a moment where we have heavy and heated debate at European level, and we talked about pharmacological, immunological, and metabolic properties. As we can feel, as soon as we enter herbals, those discussions are even more complex because the mixtures are complex. So I just want to conclude that obviously substance-based devices are not only based on herbal mixtures, and that in the debate that we are trying to have, it seems that we have to have a two-step approach as well, because we have to get on board a common understanding for single molecule, and potentially the herbal mixture is part of the debate. But just I wanted to clarify that also at European level, the single molecule is definitely potentially the first step, and then the herbals is potentially even more complex and not easy to solve. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kranz?
Very briefly, just to complement this, I think it's good that we now all agree. I think that is a very positive thing. I think we all agree that we want to have high quality products for the consumer. The legal categorization, that's a consequence out of our European system, is not in all parts, in all corners of Europe fully harmonized. But we are all aiming at the end for the same goal, that we want to have innovative products which we have to adjust, where we have to make then an assessment, sometimes also addressing particularly complexity according to the systems which we have available. So the overall direction, I think we are very much together.
I totally agree. Thank you. So, thank you to everybody. We close the session and we leave the floor to the next one. Thank you.
Allora, solo perché mantengo ancora qua il posto.
I kindly ask to our chairwoman, Francesca Mariotti, Director of Fiscal Policies in Confindustria, the Italian Federation of Industries, to come here to the podium.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you can hear me. First, let me thank you who are still here, especially for a fiscal session that indeed it's a boring session, technicality, just about regulations, but we hope to make it more lively and pleasant for all the operators. And then, of course, a special thanks to Confindustria Dispositivi Medici and, of course, to the forum for giving me the opportunity to talk about some regulatory news that impacted the sector due to the introduction of the budget law last year. So it was decided to include this session in this conference. Well, first of all, I have to tell you that, unfortunately, both Undersecretary Laura Gea and Mr. Giovanni Spalletta could not attend this meeting because, unfortunately, these days are quite committed for the budget law maneuver, and so they were both kept in Rome. But when the game is harder, the bravest start playing, and so we will do our best without them. In organizing this conference, it was decided to introduce a session on the fiscal regulatory framework of medical devices and the customs classification, because last year, with the budget law for 2019, Article 1, paragraph 3 was introduced, so a very important rule that eventually clarified the treatment of VAT, so what's the applicable VAT rate for medical devices made of substances. So this was a very useful intervention, and before going straight to the core, I have the duty to make some methodological consideration. Also, taxes have their criteria and their language, and often the fiscal language, even though sometimes we use the same words, we do not attach the same meaning that, for example, sectorial regulations attach. And so this has created or might create application problems which are quite important. Fiscal regulations have their own language, so VAT regulations, which are of a community origin, which was introduced in Italy with the presidential decree implementing a community directive. So the opportunity of having a regulation and not a directive, as we said, because this can create certain complications or slight differences between the EU, the community framework, and the Italian discipline. So it was important, this provision, because with an interpretation rule, and I will go a little bit into the details of these aspects, it was defined that medical devices based on substances and being identified in a specific way, referring to the possibility to be classified in a customs item of the combined nomenclature, the 10% tax, VAT tax rate is applicable. So where did the problem originate? Why did we have this problem of interpretation and application? And so I have to put clear right now, having an interpretation problem for VAT might create distortions, commercial distortions, impairing one of the underpinning principles of VAT discipline, that's neutrality, meaning that the difference in the VAT rate shall not guide any decision, should be neutral, shall not guide therapeutical choices of consumers. So why did we have this problem of interpretation and application? Well, starting from the VAT directive that reflected our decree, institutional decree on VAT tax in Italy, all in all, the directive allows member states to enforce reduced rates only in certain cases, and it specifies quite clearly, with reference to the overarching framework, the category, the class of products in which these medical devices were included, that the reduced rate can be applied to pharmaceutical products that are usually used for medical treatments, for the prevention of diseases, and for medical treatments. This provision was adopted, of course, in our system with, as we said, some slight differences, being it a directive, that law was further relaunched in the budget law maneuver. We talked about VAT rates for female products. Anyway, same provision. It was transposed in our system, in our Italian tax system, in a slightly different way, to a certain extent, because the national legislator claimed in the 633 DPR that this reduced VAT rate could be applied for human being use, veterinary use, homeopathic, pharmaceutical, and medication items are subject to this reduction, and chemist shops have to be equipped with, along with the official pharmacopoeia. So this was pharmaceutical directive, an Italian DPR, the VAT discipline, talking about medicines and drugs, and so this created lots of disruption. And so both the explanatory notes and the jurisprudence kept on stating what I just said, that according to these definitions, the sectorial regulation and the healthcare regulation was not interesting. And so fiscalists are quite pragmatic, and so they went straight to the court to see what was the impact, if it was a positive impact, And so I refer to the principles, the pharmacological, immunological principles. But for the interests of tax revenues, these criteria underpinning the healthcare regulations were not interesting. Still, the EU directive says that when reduced rates can be applied, it also states that member countries can refer and resort to the combined nomenclature to precisely classify the relevant categories. And here again, there's this connection that for many aspects of the national discipline is between VAT and customs discipline. That, needless to say, is more advanced than VAT discipline. It's more precise. And we can state for sure that it's more up-to-date. It keeps into account in more promptly, which are also the goods changes in the sector. And so we have seen this in this field and in many other fields as well. So what has this law of last year clarified? So before leaving the floor to Mrs. De Robertis, who is going to focus on the customs issues. Well, first, this rule, this law, this is not a very technical term, self-declared itself, self-stated itself. And this occurs frequently in tax provisions, meaning that it's stated to itself and to the world, and not only connecting the world of operators, auditors. I refer also to the average marshal who gets into the company to verify the corporate debt. It was self-defined as an interpretative law according to the taxpayer statute. So it's a law that identifies many basic principles ruling or disciplining more and more the tax law in Italy. So it's an interpretation law, and the incipit of this provision is that. So this means that unlike the general rule for which for fiscal laws they are valid in the future, being it an interpretation law, this provision is applicable also for the past, because it is declared in this way. Then it says that, I don't want to be too technical, in these items of national discipline, identifying certain goods to which the 10% VAT rate can be applied in sales, also MDMS used for medical treatment, for the prevention of diseases, veterinary treatment, and medical treatment, classified in 3004 nomenclature item with reference to the regulation. So all the medical devices, not only those. So the law, VAT law, was very strict in this regard again, because it specified the sales of this MTMS regards only those that can be classified in the custom item 3004. Well, now, allow me some statements to go back to the methodological initial considerations. When I say that purchasing and acquiring are two different things, so for tax advisors, this means purchasing from third party. If instead it says acquiring, it has a completely different meaning. It means acquiring by third parties, self-producing or leasing. So when we put off the hat of the tax advisor, these synonyms have a completely different value. And so, just like this rule self-declared itself according to Article 1, paragraph 2 of Law 27 July 2000, number 212, this wonderful statute of taxpayers' rights, said classifiable and didn't say classified. You might think that nothing changes. No, it changes completely for the application of law. Because classifiable, and this is closer to the common perception of acquired or purchased. So classifiable is everything that has that attitude, that suitability, those characteristics too. Instead, if it said classified, it meant that an actual classification of the asset was needed. So this law, again, was very useful and was the result of a long debate with Confindustria Dispositivi Medici. I perfectly recall when Fernanda came and said, Francesca, we have a problem, we have to clarify this thing. Talk to me about differences between the healing capacity. I'm sorry, I do not have even the right terminology, between metabolic, pharmacological differences. And she wrote good examples, and then I understood the law to the examples, because, again, tax advisors are very practical persons. So after this long preamble, I leave the floor to Mrs. De Robertis, because we have seen that this provision in the customs system has an impact for the customs classification, a huge impact. So thank you, and thanks for being with us. Good evening, everyone. First, let me thank Confindustria, the organizers of this forum, because we are not very expert in the medical specific sector, because as the previous speaker was saying, we are another breed, so to say. And I hope that even though we are outsiders, our contribution can be helpful to clarify some terminology and why certain choices have been made and how medical devices based on substances are positioned in the overall regulation. So I apologize with Spalletta, the colleague with whom I texted for the whole afternoon, because until the end of December, it's a nightmare with all the amendments, the fiscal decree, financial budget law. And so it's a continuum evolution in the norms and in the rules. Today there is another amendment regarding this sector. because there is a constant evolution. So while I was reading, I heard and I saw what was happening around us, and I thought that there was a constant further evolution. So first of all, I was very pleased by the previous intervention, clarifying the difference between regulations and directives. This whole matter that we're going to analyze is based on the enforcement of regulations and directives of the EU. Regulations, as we all know, are directly applicable by member countries. Directives instead need the adoption by member states within the limits that are dictated by the European Union. This is maybe a useless preamble, but it can clarify why we could issue in the Budget Law 2019, Law 145, 30th December 2018, a provision regarding medical devices based on substances. You have already developed these prerequisites. The new regulations on medical devices, 2017-745. This regulation is very important, it's pivotal, because it defines, by replacing the old directives and the old disciplines of different sectors in the industry regarding medical devices. More specifically, in the 8 sectors, we can find also medical devices based on substances. This specific sector is different from the other sector, like herbal, cosmetics, food supplements, and aesthetic devices, but also from the sector of drugs. But it is ruled not only in the national law and in the 745 regulation of 2017, but also in another regulation that to us is very important, that is ruling the customs rate, so-called TIC, that defines all the combined nomenclatures.
Today, I'm here because the rule about VAT is related to the fiscal agency, but the customs agency is here today and is dealing with this topic because all the regulation is based on a certainty that's of nomenclature. That's why we were saying before, maybe we that are dealing and working on the customs affairs, so we have to be very strict because we apply the European Union regulations. The budget law of 2009 foresees this rate for this kind of medical devices. 2019. The rate related to the VAT was only allowed for medicines, and it is allowed now for medical devices based on substances, but not others. We're going to see why. The products can be simulated and medicines for human use as they contain substances that usually are used and recognized for medical treatments, for disease preventions, and for the treatment, medical treatment or veterinary treatment. If we look at the law of 30th December number 145, Article 1, 3. In the number 114 of chart 3rd of the DPR, October 72, also medical devices based on substances that are usually used for medical treatments, for the prevention of diseases and for treatment and veterinary treatments. It can be classified in a 3004 area. The law is very clear. It gives requirements, precise requirements. So we will see why we need this clarification. And according to customs rules and laws, not all the products can be classified in this under this item have a benefit of a reduced rate of 15%, but there are other requirements that we have to satisfy. And they are defined in a rule, in a European Union rule, and that they're part of rules, of general rules. So we have to define that the European Court defines our important criteria for the classification of tariffs of certain goods, to have the interest of the certainty of laws and to facilitate controls. Why was it necessary to specify the code of tariffs in the entry, the 3004? Because of the European Union character, it is possible to classify the goods regardless of where it is produced, or if it is extra European Union product, or if it is a European Union product, or if it is extra European Union product. In this slide, I've tried to give you some information. What is the custom classification? It's one of the elements that characterize the goods for customs reasons. So when we make this kind of declaration, there are 4 elements: quality, quantity, the origins, and the value. Quality is expressed by the classification, the customs classification. The classification occurs at different levels with different details. So we have the capital that is expressed by the first 2 numbers. Capital 30 expresses all the products, all the pharmaceutical products. So we have the medical devices are under this capital, general capital of pharmaceutical products. The customs entry, the first 4 characters, so 3004. The first 6 capitals are a sub-entry. This has an important value because it's a sub-entry. It is a common element within the WCO, the World Customs Organization, for all the countries in the world. Wherever the products are produced, the different products, they have in common the first 6 numbers. The first 8 express the code of combined nomenclature, and the others express in 10 numbers the tariff codes. And we have additional codes that are important in case of medical devices based on substances in order to in relation to the VAT reduced rate. There's a specific field where we have to be specific in terms of the belonging to a specific sector it's an optional entry, an optional part that has to be defined by every single member state according to national laws that consider that allows some interesting fiscal benefits and facilitations. After this general lesson about classifications, customs classification, which can be useful anyway, practically, I want to say why the customs agency is so important in the VAT field and the monopolists. It is this customs agency and monopolist agencies are competent authorities to classify the combined nomenclature. And as foreseen in Article 1 of Law 2212, the medical devices based on substances can be classified to the entry 3004 of the combined nomenclature within Capital 30, whose title is Pharmaceutical Products. And for the classification, so as I was saying before, Law to 2000 number 212 changed the chart of DPL changed. So the classification in this capital hasn't got a value in relation to the description of the product as a drug in the legislation of the European Union, in the legislation of the member states, or in any other drug. So a product that is considered a medicine has to be written within the national pharmacopoeia. For example, in Italy, we have the Italian Association of Drug Association, where all the products, all the products, the medical products are included. As for the medical devices, if we're going to look the entry 3004, it says that within this we have medicines that are characterized by products that are mixed for therapeutical goals or prophylaxis goals, presented in different ways in doses, or including products that are aimed at the administration, for percutaneous absorption, or that are conditioned to the sale in shops. So what we've seen in 145 is a condition. It's not enough. It's necessary, this kind of condition. We have to define which are the further conditions that we need so that it can have the 10% VAT rate. If we look at the tariff and print it, and we look at what can be seen on our site, we can see that for 3004 products, the custom is 0 for third countries, but VAT is 22%. And only in some cases, according to the additional codes that we can specify, they can be entitled to have VAT at 4% or at 10%. For 4% VAT, the additional code is 049, and it is foreseen for fertilizers, for therapeutical gases, for processes, and for some menofunctional impairments. For products that are entitled to have the reduction of VAT to 10%, Q100 additional code as medical devices based on substances. For these ones, with additional code Q050, we have phyto products and mineral and chemical-based substances, products for animals, veterinary use products, homeopathic products, pharmaceutical products, medication products, where chemist shops have to be able to sell. So within the 2017 745 cases are very different one another as far as the application of VAT rates is concerned.
Man mano. Allora, abbiamo visto quindi come nel 3004
we've seen how in the 3004 we have a lot of variations, a lot of different elements of this classification. If we look, we talk about the regulation at the European Union basis. We talk about executive notes to the tariff, the combined, the European combined fee, and the complementary note of number 1 of Capital 30 of pharmaceutical products. In this note, the complementary note, we can see that we have a definition, the definition of when we can consider
un dispositivo medico.
A medical device based on substances, which are the minimum content that this product should have to be classified in this way. In particular, we see that they mean as preparations of vitamins or minerals. The preparations are based of 29, 36 microminerals, moistures for the treatment or prevention of diseases, of disorders or specific symptoms. The content or vitamins of minerals of these preparations is higher, 3 times higher, if compared to the daily recommended use. There's a specific chart where they define for every vitamin, for every mineral, what is considered to be the daily intake, the daily dosage that can be accepted by the body. Someone said before that we are very precise. It's true. We are fiscal. We can say that. We are in compliance with the rules, and we create the rules so that there is no doubt in terms of interpretation. When we have a device that is based on substances, made of substances, the first thing is to assess which are the substances. That's why in another European Union regulation related to complementary note, not the executive rule, but the complementary rule, we can we can see that the entry 3004 includes medical preparations based on herbs and based on active substances, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, essential amino acids, fat acids necessary for the retail sale, classified on the entry 3004 if they are labeled or on the package or on the prescription on the use package. They mention the symptoms for which the product has to be used, the concentration of the substance or substances, active substances contained in that preparation, the dosage, and the instructions for the way to use the product. So we assimilate in the pharmaceutical product. We have also the medical device based on substances. The one is based on chemistry, whereas the medical device is based on physics. I'm an engineer, so for me, these are two different fields. Physics is characterized by kinetics, hemodynamic, kinetics, and different mechanisms. So if we look at a patch, for example, they have different aspects. So the chemical aspects, the mechanical aspects, and so on. It's a very precise science.
Quindi, ai fini della classificazione.
As for the classifications goals, when we have a product that needs to be classified, what do? We highlight that in the package, we must have all the features, all the characteristics foreseen in the European Union regulation, and that we send to the chemical laboratory to be examined. They have to examine the active substances declared by the manufacturer, so to verify, to assess that the content of the substances, the active substances that has been declared, is 3 times higher in respect to what is said in the European Union regulation. The interesting aspect of this general combination, the manufacturer point of situation and the European Union one. So we get them as a national rule, but the national rule hasn't got a national basis, but as a European basis. So it is all connected to the European rule, European regulation that can be reflected in every state. It's not a national regulation, but it's a European regulation.
Condurvi per mano su un aspetto tecnico, ma anche giuridico, non solo tecnico. Allora, qui come quindi agisce la dogana?
What about the actions of the customs?
Criteri per la classificazione, questo ne abbiamo parlato, pareri di classificazione. Come lavora la dogana ai fini di questa, diciamo, aliquota ridotta?
What about this reduced VAT rate? The customs agency has an office that is within my directorate that want to classify the goods. So usually we give information about the binding rates, the ITV, the so-called ITV, the different consultations regarding these classifications belong to a wider set of activities related to a specific code of the customs agency. These are opinions at a European level because the ITV is an official authorization that we submit that on the basis of the manufacturing companies that ask us about that, is that till a different decision is taken by the European Union, it is a binding action in terms of nomenclature that is going to safeguard the manufacturer and also for the product that is classified, in this case, by the financial administration. Beside this opinion, this consultation, that is called UCC, Union Code, Community Code, in this specific case, the fiscal agency, within the law of the fiscal law, it is possible to make an appeal to define the VAT rate considering the Chart A of DPR 63372. The fiscal agency decides not just for medical devices. Before doing this appeal, companies needs to have an opinion by the customs agency before moving to the next step. You can ask a technical opinion, a technical consultation, or a preliminary consultation to the revenue agency. If you ask a classification, a custom classification of goods, we have to say that this advice is not binding. It is binding if nobody is going to contest that. Sometimes some advices are different because different countries classify them in a different way. So when we have work groups, we can find then eventually a common agreement. Regularly, we have these meetings because, as you can imagine, everything that is on our earth has to be classified, especially if we have new products, new technology. The situation is very complex. In this case, everything is well structured. It is not necessary to have a specific kind of formality. From the 1st of October, we have the introduction on the European Union portal. With the ITV, we have some terms to get the response. For the revenue agency, there are no peremptory terms. As I was saying before, in your field, we have to proceed in a preliminary way to do some technical assessments. There's a detailed assessment by the chemical laboratory within the customs agency to verify the active ingredients and that they are properly introduced in the medicine instructions. It has to be very detailed, and it is important to send the samples of the product and everything that is in the package itself, and also the aims, the aims of the products. The Commission can ask for further documentation if necessary. There are some cases where there are different interpretations. And we might also have some controversial situations. It is important to define the characteristics of the products and the therapeutical effects that the products wants to achieve.
So I wanted to tell you that when the new law was introduced, as you might perfectly understand, actually the number of applications for opinion increased a lot. Just 1 year, we had more than 20 companies applying, and each company applied from 20 to 60 products for each application. So the number of applications received is very high, and this shows a great interest from Italy in this sector. And so I was told that our country envisages 4,000 companies in the sector with 76,000 employees, 16.5 billion euros as a turnover. Therefore, these are data that are very, very important that cannot be neglected. And last, I was provoked by the speaker when she thought about the difference between classified and classifiable. What does it mean? Well, according to the Union Customs Code, the EU Customs Code, classification of goods in customs classification is a task of the declaring party, those who present this declaration, this statement. So when this statement is submitted, the applicant shall put the type code on its own initiative. So it's not necessary that there must be beforehand the opinion that that's a possibility. It's not mandatory for us. So once the customs instead ascertains that this statement is truthful, it becomes classified. So the administration classifies, and the users sees it as classifiable into a category or another. So it's like the difference between statement and bill. The bill is after the customs has been passed. So in this sector, especially if there are some hurdles for the classification, we understand that first, it's a new law, so there might be some basic uncertainties. And we are more than willing to provide support. Of course, we shouldn't be overwhelmed, but it's part of the game anyway. If instead you, with your internal chemical labs and your facilities, if you have verified the certainty and the viability of your products, it's not necessary that each new product shall apply for the request of opinion for classification, because the EU rule envisages by the operators the statement of these qualities of the product. So if you have further questions, I'm here available.
Grazie davvero, dottoressa De Robertis, anche per quello.
Thank you, De Robertis, for the Lectio Brevis that I think was very useful for everyone. Because every discipline has its hermeneutical and substantial rules. And thanks for describing in a very thorough and exhaustive way the discipline, the EU and national discipline, and also for providing these operational, practical hints for the operators to, in the end, eventually be certain of what they can do. And finally, to conclude, to understand when they sell the products with which VAT rate they have to sell. So we have understood that also to the customs agency it's possible to appeal to apply for this technical opinion. For the revenues agency there is another application with different formalities. It's not an obligation, instead it's an opportunity. So if operators have difficulties to classify correctly, to self-classify correctly the goods, but there is also what can be defined a self-certification with a statement, and when the goods pass to the customs, this statement becomes a certifying self-classification that the company has provided. So thank you very much. Now I leave the floor to Fernanda once again for some final remarks. Fernanda Gelona, you have the floor. Thank you. I shared the thankings to the Robertis. Of course, this matter is not easy, and of course, for the insiders, but also for us, it was important today to get this general overview and some additional answer as for what the rule has set forth. It's a bit late, but I'm wondering if there are questions in the audience. Good evening. The question concerns customs classification. I understood from your intervention that classification is very precise, meaning that if the device contains certain active principles, it obtains that classification. You at the customs, you haven't provided an extensive interpretation of any kind. For example, a medical device that has amino acids, this amino acid is not essential, that the required one, and does not obtain classification. What happens? Well, extensive interpretations, we are quite strict. We do not have it. Even because when there is regulation setting the parameters, we have to abide by these parameters. In the composition, of course, there are some additional aspects, very technical in the fiscal part, but just a few in the health ones. So there are some additional parameters that actually are active principles that are interesting for the classification purposes. And then there are some additional products that can be flavoring agents or excipients, which are not important for the classification. So the important part is that, given that in the description, it's fundamental to say what's the therapeutical purpose of the device. If there is no therapeutical purpose, it cannot benefit from the VAT that is set for drugs. Yes, and it's not enough. We need those active principles to be included. The active principles that you declared as necessary for the therapeutical purpose and not equal to a daily dose. So, for example, food supplements, instead of eating an orange. I'm making a trivial example. You take this vitamin C. This is not a therapeutical use because it's a food supplementary product. So instead, if you have a disease and you do not have vitamin C, if there is scurvy, for example, and you give it triple the dose of vitamin C, that's a therapeutical purpose. It was just a trivial example. This is, again, a limitation because it's easy for products to be ingested. But for devices which act in a different way, this limitation is penalizing. Yes, of course. I apologize, just to better understand. If instead I have a device, a medical device based on substances with substances that I ingest but which do not have a feeding purpose, if they have a therapeutical purpose, of course, yes. But with this physical mechanism you are referring to, protective barrier, and do not have this triple dose. I didn't understand. Just for vitamins. Okay, so it's just for vitamins. Okay, that's it. Well, the MDMS is not just for vitamins, but also amino acids, minerals, and so on. It's not only for vitamins. Maybe this example deviated a little bit the topic. Thank you. Further questions? Anyway, I'm not a tax advisor, so I'm not technical also for devices, so I will ask a general question. Actually, we have a family of products, if you want, which are substance-based medical devices that, according to the law, can benefit from this reduced VAT. The 3004 fee. But it doesn't suffice to be an MDMS to enter this customs item 3004. Am I correct? Yes, or not all the 3004 benefit from reduced VAT to 10%. So it's even different. So the contrary, because all medical devices based on substances are included in 3004, but not all 3004 have this reduced rate. I think that's clear. So the invitation. The opinion is needed. If it is certain, no problem. If there are uncertainties, we are available. so the agency can provide its opinion. So we can get to our conclusion. It was a very demanding day, but also full of insights and dialogue and debates. So this final session, well, really thank you. Thanks to all the persons who, after this very long day, resisted up to now. So it means that this topic was extremely interesting. We are not stopping here because as a category association, we will keep on creating occasions to share opinions and clarify, provide explanations as we did in the past. We will do that again. So thanks to everyone, thanks to the speakers, and enjoy the weekend and have a nice Sunday. Thank you.